with us.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this talk, which is really about finance for new business. We're talking about some specifics, and we've got, I was requested to break the talk down into bite-sized components so that it can be turned into a podcast or something like that. So I'm going to run through actually 7 presentations, 6 with information, and the 7th one is a summary, which can lead us into Q&A at the end. Happy to answer any questions. But the starting point for all of this is we do need, and it's always very difficult, of course, with an international audience, but we do need to be very clear about some words. The term spin-off or spin-out, depending on which country you come from, really relates to the creation of a company coming out of academic research at a university that may have some commercial potential. So that's the typical definition of what a spin-off or spin-out is. But it's nothing clever about that. It's simply saying that there are university people who have ideas and they want to turn that into a business opportunity. Now, most ideas around university research may involve further research and development of the technology, the ideas, and let me start off with the first key point everybody needs to know. No financier could care less about your technology. They're not interested. Now, this comes as mostly like a shock to many academic researchers who've spent their life in this area, and they're justifiably proud of what they've achieved and what they've done. So that sounds a very strange thing. Why are they not interested in the technology? Because real life financiers are interested in the ability of the management team to realize commercial value from the research that's been undertaken. The actual research itself is not a matter of interest to them. They may not understand it. So it really is all about the management team. And so please don't be offended if financiers express less interest in your technology. It's not because it's not interesting, it's not valid, it's not important, it's not life-changing or life-saving. It's none of those things. It's because what they're interested in is if they put finance into you, can this management team turn that into a sound return to either repay a loan or to increase the share price for equity finance and so on. So we're talking this morning then about finance. If I can make this work. Yeah, here we are. So I would have to just, by way of introduction, I don't know what is actually showing on your screen. Is that now hopefully says speaker, so who I am. So my background is MD, PhD, so medical research in particular, and 3 spin-outs based on medical research from the University of Oxford. But more importantly, for people who are here today, I have, with colleagues, worked with over 8,000 new business founders from 36 countries. So what we're talking about now is real life and experience-based, and in particular evidence-based, and not textbook-based and theoretical or YouTube short video. It's kind of the real life experience over the last 25 years, I guess, and I hope you'll find that helpful. So in all of this then, the first thing that I would have to say to you is that any new business, doesn't matter what the business is, any new business will require some kind of startup funding. Every new business requires some startup funding. And what I would say is that it's very important to make a distinction between how accountants speak and describe things and how it works in real life in business. What do I mean by that? Well, I hope that you are looking at a slide that says describing business finance at the moment. Juan or Meg, can you nod if that's what's on your screen? Because thank you very much. So there are 3 main forms of financial reporting. The absolute important necessity for you to understand with a new business is the cash flow forecast. Now, we've created a booklet that I'm going to show you later, just 32 pages, that explains how to do this cash flow forecast, 1 page per year, simple Excel. And it's not difficult, and we'll go through that and you'll see how it works. But this is absolutely vital. It's a budget, if you like, it's your prediction, it's a forecast, and it's what you think your business is going to spend over the next year, because it's a page per year. Very simple. But it's also including at the same time, not just what you expect to spend, but what you expect to earn. And that's always more difficult to predict. It is a forecast. What accountants create and what banks request is a profit and loss account and a balance sheet. They're very helpful, but they refer to a trading period that's just completed. There's been no trading period if you're a new startup, so they don't make sense. It doesn't mean, however, that you don't have to do it. If you want to get the money from the bank, then you'll certainly have to provide what they ask for. But I cannot stress enough the real life necessity of a cash flow forecast. So we're going to have a look at that, and we're not going to look at profit and loss or P&L and balance sheet. So the cash flow forecast then is absolutely critical. This is in the booklet. There is a format for the spreadsheet, and we'll make all of these available. I won't be involved after today, but Juan Ramon will have a website, and I'm sure you'll be able to download things from that in terms of all this material, the booklet, and indeed even an Excel spreadsheet to help you. So what really matters then? Well, for a new startup business, and it doesn't have to be just a spin out, we need this cash flow forecast. If you've never done one before, take a look at the booklet that we've created. There's just a few pages there to read. If you're not sure how it works, don't try and guess. I'm not expecting you to become an accountant, but every new business needs an accountant. So ask your accountant to help you. So really important to realize that you need a team. You may be the best scientist in the world, you may have a wonderful breakthrough, but nobody expects you to be knowledgeable about business, and certainly not about accounting. So please recognize you will need to put together a team to help you with this. So getting cash at the beginning is why we need to work with financiers. It's their cash, so we have to play by their rules. What are the key things to bear in mind? You've got to have cash to make progress. And the worst possible thing you should do is to make purchases. Never raise finance and then spend it on buying something. I mean, some people buy buildings. Absolute madness when you can rent them. It's all very standard. Rent wherever possible and buy almost nothing. You've got to use the cash to make progress. This is particularly true if you're selling shares, investment finance, as we'll look at in a later talk this morning. So it's the operational expenditure, OPEX for short, where the cash should be spent, and capital expenditure, buying machines, buildings, cars, is where you should never spend it unless you absolutely have no other choice. So use cash then to make progress, not to make purchases. So why do startups buy things? Well, traditional thinking, and it's not silly, it's pragmatic, is that if you buy something, if anything goes wrong with the business, you have an asset to sell, so you can pay off the debt. But whilst that's pragmatic, it's just nothing to do with entrepreneurship. And so I think that thinking is certainly outdated and probably flawed. I think it's sensible to wait until you become profitable before you start buying anything. If the business has got more money coming in than going out, great, then you're in a position to buy things. But don't use money that you've raised at the beginning to buy things. You've got to use it to make progress, hiring people, achieving milestones, etc., as we'll look at later. So it's all about a good management team. And what does a good management team do? It uses money to make money. And if we're looking at a good spin out from a good university with a good management team, I can give you a rule that you won't read in textbooks. A good team will turn every euro invested in them into €7 by the time of the next round. So you're looking at multiples of increase in value. If you were to buy a building in Malta, then maybe you'd get 8% per year as a return as the price goes up. So that's a multiple of 1.08. I'm talking about, in these spin outs, a multiple of 7. And so it's a much bigger jump. But for the bigger jump, there is, of course, a bigger risk. And those things balance out. So is there a way of looking at this that's common to all business? Yes. And we call it the shape of finance, the picture that you're now looking at. The blue line is no more than your cash flow forecast, your budget, with your prediction of what money will be in the bank account at the end of each month over a period of time. And you can see at the beginning, it goes down. And so the red represents going negative at the bank. The green is positive. Now it goes down for a period of time, and then it comes back, it crosses the line, and then ultimately you've got more money in the bank account rather than negative. There's only 2 pieces of information you need when you come to raise money at the beginning for a startup. Number 1, how long do you need it? And number 2, how much? If you need €1,000 and you expect to be profitable in 6 months, borrow it from mum and dad, if possible, or from friends, or sell your car. Don't take investment. If you need $1 million and you can't be profitable for 2 years, nobody will lend you money like that unless you can repay it. No bank. So you have almost no choice but to seek equity finance, which is where you sell shares to investors. So this shape of finance, how long and how much, determines exactly what you intend to do. For any startup business, equity finance selling shares is going to be a bridge too far. It's going to be too complicated and not within your reach. In the early stages, banks may be very reluctant to lend you money because you're not yet profitable or have no track record of being profitable. And so they would argue quite correctly, you can't repay the loan. So you must, any startup, begin by considering looking for grant funding, typically from government, and most governments have those. Now this shape assumes that there's going to be a break-even point at some time. And that's going to be true for the majority of businesses. It even applies to social enterprises. Although we're talking here about commercial enterprise, it applies to social enterprise. What is the difference between the two? In a commercial enterprise, any profit can be divided between the owners at the end of a trading period. In a social enterprise, profit cannot be divided between owners, and that's the only difference. You may have heard of a phrase or an acronym, but the phrase not for profit. Please never use that term. Not for profit is illegal. Illegal. If you are unable to pay your bills when they become due, whether you are a social enterprise or a commercial enterprise, you can go to prison. So not-for-profit is a very silly title. The correct term should be not for distribution. Every business, social or commercial, must be able to meet its liabilities, pay bills when they become due. So not-for-profit isn't real, doesn't exist. Social enterprises may get their money from donation. They may not be selling things directly to beneficiaries, but ultimately they must have more coming in than they're spending. So that's what we mean by making a profit. Often people in that sector struggle with the term profit, so we just use the word surplus, and then everybody's happy. But you have to have a surplus, otherwise it's illegal. Now, the shape of finance that I've showed you is common to pretty much anything. So what are the options at the beginning then to help address that initial shortfall? Quite often, the founder's own savings. Grant funding I've already recommended, sometimes a loan from family and friends, crowdfunding, that can be useful, particularly when it's an upfront early payment in advance. Crowdfunding for equity finance is ridiculous for reasons I'll explain later, so please don't consider that. Debt finance, brilliant, but you're always going to be struggling as a new spin out or a new business to persuade a bank that you'll be able to repay the loan. So they may wish to take a charge over your home. So be very cautious about that. And equity finance, we'll talk about later, is about selling shares in the company. Now, ultimately, sales are important, but you may not have sales for some time. If you're opening a cake shop, if that's your business, or you're growing new types of vegetables for a specialist organic market, maybe you can begin to sell things when the crop comes in or when you bake the cakes. If you're doing something more long-term, and my area was development of new drugs, particularly for use in patients with cancer or very bad infections, it may be some years before the product is on the market. So no bank would ever lend the money. So it's really very difficult and your options are limited. But what this startup finance does is no more than take the blue line out of the negative. So raise what you need to cover the initial period when you're spending more than is coming in. You're going to have to find a way to do that. And it may be that you put some of your own money into it, etc., etc. So that's all you've got to really think about for startup finance. How much do I need and for how long? And that will then determine the way that you approach it.